Hey all, Grolo here. I've been wanting to put together a video to update my predictions. As you know, I did a predictions video at the start of 2025, about 2025, and I wanted to circle back and see how we did on those predictions. We did this recently during one of my live streams, and so in this video I stitched together the relevant parts of that live stream into a cohesive thing. Then at the end of this video, I circle back and I update my predictions for the next few years. So if you want to see those, you'll see those at the very end of the video. And we will do the same thing at the end of this year. We'll circle back and we'll see how we did on these predictions, right? But during this live stream that I have sprinkled in the middle here on this video, we really got into a lot of the nitty gritty on these predictions. And we also kind of went off-roading into a lot of technical conversation behind some of these things. So yeah, put this together. Hope you enjoy it. I will hopefully catch you in the next one. Thank you to all those who come out for the live streams and help make them as enjoyable as they are, and I would love to see even more of you out next time. I do the live streams every Saturday, and then I try to do as many videos as I can throughout the week. So again, thank you. Hope you enjoy it. 2025 was an amazing year for Star Citizen. It was a great year for PAX Day, great year for Ashes of Creation. Those are the big three. They hold all the hope for the next decade, probably. I can't think of any others in the running other than maybe the fabled Riot MMO that I keep hearing nothing about, other than it got restarted, what, like a year or so ago? So as an MMO lover and player, I'm putting all my eggs in the basket of these three games. Yeah, I was looking through, I mentioned this in previous videos. I did a video at the beginning of 2025 where I was making predictions for Star Citizen for 2025 and 2026. I thought we'd go back, take a look at that live, see how those predictions panned out, and maybe make some of our own as we get into 2026 here. I don't think I was that close on some things. Other things, fairly close. What was it? Yeah, it was Star Citizen 2025. This was the video. Predictions. I've already jumped right to the part that matters. If you go into the video, you go right to... Or if you go to the video, there was a part in the video where I brought this screen up, where I talked about, where I kind of broke down what I thought we needed. For a little bit of context, if you've watched this whole video, you'll see me dig into like the problems the game was having at the time. Now, rewind your mind to the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, the state the game was in. It was pretty rough shape at that time, right? The Pyro patch had just landed. We had just gotten static server meshing. They went on Christmas break just like they did this year. Just like they do every year, right? With a patch that is probably struggling. But prior to that static server meshing patch landing, I mean, we were still dealing with 30Ks and massive instability. You were lucky if you could get an hour play session and all that kind of stuff. And then we went into this new world where, you know, I can play 8 hours straight. At most, I'll get a server error window for a little bit that goes away in 30 seconds or so. So that was the context for when I was making these predictions. As you can see, not all of them panned out. I'm just going to play a short little clip here. I'm only going to play like 30 seconds, just to get a little bit more context. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the armor stands, the habs, that kind of stuff. I don't think we'll actually see base building until 2026, which is why I put that in the 2026 column. I think going into 2026, they'll kind of expand on the hab and give us the ability to start crafting base components and using the UI that they delivered in 2025 to place those and so on and so forth. And I'm suspecting by the end of 2026, we will have at least small base building, maybe medium base building. That's my estimate. Again, I could be wrong. We're going to come back and check on my guesses to see how right I am at the end of this year. There you go. That's what we're doing now. We're going to see how right I was. As I was saying, I thought we were going to get the habs. If you remember back in like, I don't know, it was maybe mid 2024, they had put out those teaser videos where they were showing those kind of prefabbed habs that like we would just be able to plop down planet side, and they had like all the living quarters and stuff in them. They featured the suit lockers, all that kind of stuff. yeah, it would be huge. And I expected we were going to get that in 2025 ahead of full-blown base building. As I said in the video at the time, like there's a lot of things just to get us to the point of getting habs without doing full-blown base building. Like they were going to need the tech, like the user interface for allowing us to visualize where we're placing a building, just like we're going to need for base building as they have presented it in multiple venues by now. We were going to need that. We were going to need the ability to connect some kind of a building to the ground. Way back early to mid 2024, they had talked about what that was going to look like. They were talking about like the complexity of just putting a building on the ground and how the building was either going to have to morph to the ground or the ground was going to morph to the building to make it look continuous, right? And to make it look like you just didn't have like a square box sitting on top of a pebble and like a gap. And there's going to have to be some technology there. So just the UI, the ground to building meshing, all that kind of stuff. We need all that just to get a hab down without all the other complexity of base building. You know, they've talked about storage systems and like power networks and all that stuff that goes along with base building that we wouldn't necessarily need for just a hab placement. So that was what was in my mind whenever I made that prediction. Like, if they wanted base building in 2026, hab placement in 2025 would have been a really nice step in that direction. We didn't get it. Obviously, I was wrong about this one. I don't know if that still is going to be a stepping stone on the way to full-blown base building or not, but that was a total miss. Total miss on my part. The other prediction I made for 2025, missions, transit, collisions, etc. I was expecting a lot of progress on those. We still have not got a big glorified transit refactor. That is still something that they have one of their Joker card teams on. So I was wrong on this one as well. Although the missions, we did see a lot of improvements on throughout 2025. You go back to end of 2024, beginning of 2025, when the Pyro patch landed, a lot of the missions were basically just no longer operational in the world of server meshing, and they have brought a lot of those back online throughout 2025, and so hit there on the prediction. Collisions, I think I was hoping that we were going to see improvements to the collision system throughout 2025, and I don't think we have seen any of that. So, big miss there. NPC behavior, though, we have seen a lot of improvements on. I don't know about you, but when I'm in these FPS missions now, if the server's performing well, the NPCs can be pretty dangerous. So that's a big success, big change, big improvement. Happy to see that. And just in general, you know, if you've been following the updates on each of these patches, I mean, there's a ton of work that have gone into the NPCs, the ability for them to operate vehicles. I think we've even seen some dropship things with NPCs happening, which has been great. You think crafting 2027 crossfade? Whiff? Thanks, Solace. Big whiff on a few of them. You think base building is after Planet Tech V5? Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Wolf. The stuff in Planet Tech V5 may make that easier, like the ability to place a building on the ground. Good thought. I've been enjoying the FPS action. Me too. So it's been a lot better. So NPC behavior hit there. Org improvements, we saw none of it. We did see some integration between Party Chat and Spectrum. That was the only social improvement that we really saw that I'm aware of in 2025. I wish we had seen more there, but who knows? Maybe 2026. In the also category, that was kind of like the maybe for my 2025. Engineering fires, we got those at the very end of 2025. They're in the game in a questionably stable patch, but they are in the game. So that made the list. New missions, we got a lot of new missions throughout 2025, so that made the list. We got those new escort missions, which were pretty cool. I've actually really enjoyed those. I thought they were some of the better flight-oriented missions that we've gotten. And then the ones where you had to hide in the gas clouds and all kinds of new missions. Really both in the flight combat, but also the new hauling missions. We got a ton of new hauling missions throughout 2025. Quite a few new ground missions in the form of the new events, like new ASD facilities and all that stuff. So a lot of new mission work, which we kind of expected, because at the beginning of 2025, they said, this is going to be the year of content, the year of stability. That made sense. I can't believe I was brazen enough to put Maelstrom on the list. I don't think we're much closer to seeing that in action. I put a question mark behind it because obviously it was I was being very hopeful there. But so I don't know. What do I got? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 misses, and 1, 2, 3, 4 hits, 5 misses. I'm coming in just shy of 50-50, guys, on the predictions. But what are you gonna do? Wishful thinking, Wolf. Thanks. Pretty good estimates overall, especially with SC. Quantum to own ships was a nice add, and Quantum to party has been working fairly. That's good. I totally missed that. There was definitely some things, like some extras that we got that nobody really saw coming at the beginning of 2025. Quantum to party and your own ship was a big quality of life improvement. Also, all the Wicklow stuff and that entire realm of missioning and reward, none of that existed at the start of 2025, so that's all new. Stuff that wasn't even on the radar. What else? What else do we get in 2025 that was not expected? Got a new star system at the end of 2025. That was nowhere on my list, all in 2025 or 2026. I think if you watch the video back too, you'll explicitly see me suggest we would not get a new star system. But again, I've said this before. Hate them or not, Wicklow is a thing a lot of people interact with. It was. I mean, it drove a lot of interaction, even in my org. I mean, there's a lot of interaction with the Wicklow system. I personally am not a fan, but there's a lot of people that are. And it's been the most engaged we've seen the player base with the game in many years. So, ever. So, it's hard to argue with the success of it. Got a ton of ships, yeah. Completely forgot about Nyx, right? Now, in my defense, I was predicting that the next star system would be delivered similarly to how Pyro was delivered. And if you remember, Pyro was delivered basically complete. Like, we got the entire system, planets, the moons, all at once. And I was imagining CIG would continue to deliver systems in that way. But they've really changed gears here, and Nyx is going to be delivered piecemeal. Obviously, that allowed them to get that out the door much faster than if they waited until all the planets and every moon and everything was done, right? So we're going to be getting probably one planet at a time, one moon at a time, whatever that looks like in a piecemeal world. But it's definitely changed what we'll see as the cadence of system delivery if all future systems are delivered this way. I mean, we could theoretically be in a place where we have multiple incomplete systems, right? They could deliver the next system. They could deliver Terra or whatever while they're still developing and flushing out Nyx. So it's going to be really hard to nail down when we're going to see these systems with this model. Not that it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Your prediction for 2026 is more worms? Yeah, I mean, the fact is there is content in Nyx. It's not like it's a completely empty system, right? I mean, there's missions in there. There's, I mean, the new station, amazing. The asteroid stuff going on. I mean, there's definitely content in there. Can't wait to see the planets, especially since they're the first V5 planets. That's gonna be crazy. Now, of course, my 2026 list. I was predicting 2 years out at the end of 2024 for this 2026 list, and I had crafting on there, and it looks like that's gonna be spot on, right? You look at the last comlink transmission they sent on the matter. I think I have it up here. Yeah, this was the roadmap roundup from middle of December. They said on the progress tracker they have crafting ending March 2026, which means we'll probably see it mid 2026. So that would imply that we were on point with the crafting prediction. The next one for 2026 was base building, and this one I'm now much less confident on. I don't know that we're going to see that this year. Again, knowing that we didn't see any kind of preliminary steps towards that in 2025, it's going to be hard for me to believe that we're going to see the whole kit and caboodle this year. Whenever they still have engineering to polish, wrap up. I mean, this patch they just put out is going to require a lot of work to stabilize and get it feeling like we all want it to feel. Crafting, the rollout of that is going to be pretty significant. And I'm sure even once it's rolled out, there's going to be a lot of follow-up work to it. So base building this year, I'm much less confident on. What's up, Expat Brat? Thanks for stopping out. I love your videos too. The feeling is mutual. Gonna get the Nyx planets in a few months. Yeah. Don't forget VR. Oh my gosh. No kidding. Huge thing. Yeah. I mean, VR, the moment I stepped into Star Citizen, which was, I don't even know, 4 years ago at this point, and I started interacting with the game, like, at that point, I was like, yeah, this game is being built from VR, and this was way before anybody was really talking about it that much, so whenever they finally started talking about it, like, it didn't come as a huge shock, but the timing came as a huge shock. I certainly didn't expect it to kind of enter a mainstream patch and release this early on, but yeah, huge. Good pointing that out. Nowhere on any of my lists, but here it is. I don't know. I have not tried it yet. I do not have any VR gear. I'd be interested to know here who all here is playing with it. Wolf. That's how I really think of it, man. Base building will be at the holiday break patch in 2026. That's probably as good a guess as any. If they are going to release base building in 2026, it will definitely be right before they go on holiday break. VR is pretty dope for flight. Not a fan for FPS though. I can't imagine. But for flight, yeah, I can see it really working out well. I'm already using things like Tobii Eye Tracker in flight, but I do not like it in FPS. I know some people use Tobii Eye Tracker in FPS mode. I can't get used to it in FPS. Like, I want my character to look at my mouse. I have not been able to break that. The next preview build has to be crafting. It will have to come along with the next tier of looting, I think. But I so wish we had the new social stuff already. I know. The new social stuff is... Ugh. I think anybody in a org is missing that. Has been missing it for some time. Yeah, Vulcan. That was a big new thing in 2026 for sure. Or in 2025, sorry. New inventory, yeah. That was another thing on the list here, Solace. So crafting is in March. Inventory, the work is ending in January 2026. This one kind of surprised me because whenever they gave us a sneak peek at it in, mid 2025? Something like that. They were very intentional about saying, hey, this is nowhere close to being delivered. We just wanted to give you a sneak peek. So with that kind of language, the development ending in January feels a lot sooner than I would have anticipated. You got a weird Chrome Dome, you got a weird wish list for 2026, improved ground vehicle physics. Oh my gosh. I would love improved ground vehicle physics. I don't think that's weird at all. I mean, I have a wish list item of roads. I would love to see roads. Looting bodies is still rough just to get the menu open, I know. Well, as part of this inventory rework, I think the idea is they also want to improve managing all inventory actions nearby, right? So they were talking about how that new inventory screen will allow you to source from local containers or nearby containers. I don't know what the distance looks like yet. So that could definitely be a component of overhauling the looting system. We can hope. And Daniel Johnson, Gloom Underlight, thank you for the subs. Really appreciate it, guys. They definitely sound like they want to move in the direction of, like, I've never played DayZ, but I played Dune Awakening. Dune Awakening is a game that implemented a system like this where, you know, you could source from chests near you. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like in this new paper doll system they have planned, but it's going to be interesting. But I think that it's also the timing on it. If you look at, I mean, that work is wrapping up January, crafting is wrapping up March. It seems obvious to me that the new inventory system and the way that you interact with boxes and crates and bodies and all that stuff nearby is going to be kind of central to how they deliver crafting. It only makes sense, and I think they even called that out because somebody was asking about, if you remember the crafting demonstration they gave during CitizenCon Direct, where they showed the machine and it had like the little slots where you input the boxes, you know. They said, well, what if you have something in like a 32 SCU crate and you need that, whatever's in that 32 SCU crate, into the crafting machine? Like, are you going to have to somehow break the 32 SCU crate apart into like smaller containers so that you can load it into the machine? Is there going to be like an alternative way of doing that? And the dev response was something along the lines of this new inventory interaction system and paper doll system playing a part in that. So yeah, exactly, expat. I think we need to see our hangar become a lot more of a home. I mean, that's on the long-term roadmap tracker, right? We go way out to Star Citizen 1.0. But I have seen no mention of this in hangar upgrades. We're talking about expanding personal hangar customization with new upgrades, layouts, functional improvements. It's on the list, but I don't think it's on the near-term list. I would love to see it. But I would also love to see us able to place those habs planet side. So that, I mean, that's what I want. Expat, I want to be able to live on a planet. I want to be able to buy one of those habs. I want to be able to place it planet side, and I want to park my ship right next to my hab and just walk out of my ship into my hab. That's my dream. I don't want to land in a hangar anymore. Although I would love the ability to customize the hangars to that extent as well. I feel like it's easier to move to hangars having more function than habs, but yeah, no, I totally agree. The road from here to there is much shorter. I'll feel at home when I can sit and drink a cup of something at the same time. Fair enough. I didn't even consider that you could not do that. You really can't sit and drink at the same time? A hab by a stream with good fishing? Hey, yeah, I mean, we got to get the fishing first. Chris said it was coming, right? He said we were going to get fishing. Be able to live by ourselves on some planet nobody ever sees but us. At that Chinese, at the China Bar Citizen thing they did. I'm figuring out the very least player bases will have a freight elevator and outside habs, maybe eventually larger underground type facilities for work housing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've kind of showed that in some of their stuff. The freight elevator system working in player bases, and I said there was also going to be some attention given to the freight system being connected to the various buildings on your base. I don't know what the considerations of that are going to be. It's going to be interesting. Kind of along the lines of power, it felt like. All the habs on your base are going to have to be connected to a power source, and yada, yada, yada. A lot of things you don't know. I like the old hangar people show me with every ship you own. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, expat. There's pros and cons to instancing, right? Like, we totally get why things are instanced, and the current hab, or the current hangars that we have, way easier to scale by sending stuff down the elevator. You got kind of the magical storage down there. Makes total sense. But there's definitely something about landing your fleet of ships side by side and seeing everything in the world physicalized. Yeah, basis definitely hope can give us more multi-ship garage feel instead of the single ship thing now. Yeah, exactly, Nick. The reason I think that base building is poised to deliver that better than something like, Rip Port, something like the hangars we have now is that is a strength of meshing, right? Like the static and eventually dynamic server meshing. This has been a hot topic around here for quite some time, but whenever you are funneling a bunch of people into a small area like one city, we're going to continue to run into limitations that dynamic server meshing or static server meshing cannot help us with, right? You're only going to be able to scale those servers down to a certain distance before it gets too small to add more servers to it. But whenever you are spreading players out throughout the galaxy or the universe, that's where dynamic server meshing or static server meshing shines in distributing that player load. So I think they will be more capable of having all of our ships on display, parked side by side, everything physicalized in the world, than they will be in a place like New Babbage. If you tried to physicalize everybody's ships all at the same time in New Babbage, I mean, that would be a nightmare of the scale. One server per player, easy, yeah. I talk a lot about why that's not possible, Hustle. But one server per square 100 gigameters? Yeah, definitely. It's definitely possible. When you spread people out across multiple moons, multiple planets, all over, I mean, it becomes a lot more feasible. Events and gatherings, you're still going to attempt to break things? Absolutely. Yeah. They can scale out with as many servers as they want to blanket the universe. You're still going to have problems with the Daymar rally, unfortunately. This is working pretty well. I had not played since server maintenance last week, and when I logged in, I was back in the AST facility. Nice. That's a totally another thing. I think I actually mentioned that in the 2026 column. So obviously, base building, TBD. It'd be nice if we got the hab building this year, but I don't know. Server stability, obviously they've been iterating on that for quite some time. But yeah, here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bullet point down. I said improved friend experience and log in, log out. That's kind of what I was thinking whenever I did this video at the beginning of 2024. Solace was them improving the log in, log out experience. And I know they've mentioned this as an explicit goal of theirs. Like, they don't want us going back to the nearest space station every time we log out. They want us to log in where we logged out at. I don't think we're going to see selectable identifiable servers this year. I think they're going to continue through 2026 with friend-oriented servers, as strange as that is for an MMO. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw the beginnings of this log in, log out thing this year. But then again, it took them an incredible amount of patience and work just to get hangar spawning in the game. Remember, they tried to put it in, ran into a bunch of problems, had to yank it out, put it back in. I don't know how well that bodes for tracking everybody's position on log in, log out without a bed. What do you think? I wonder with that demo they showed of 3 servers handling 3 rooms and a hallway to show the interactivity between the servers, if that level of granularity will be present in extreme crowd situations with dynamic. They pull out all the stops. Solutions for extremes. Yeah, I mean, 3 servers handling 3 rooms and a hallway. Again, like, you could have 3 servers handling 3 rooms sitting right next to each other. The problem is whenever you pack people into those areas, right? If the servers have to know what's going on in the other servers and how much information they have to transfer back and forth, that's the bottleneck. It's not, at that level, the compute is not the bottleneck, it's the network. So they crafted a very elegant demo where you had an L-shaped hallway, right? The reason for that L, like if you're trying to limit network overhead, there's a very good reason for the L shape. That's because I'm having a hard time, but the people on this end of the L cannot see the people on this end of the L, right? They can both see the center square that connects the 2 L's. And so there's only 2 areas that have to know about each other. Those other ends of the L's do not have to know about each other, and that's the magic sauce. Like, you need a way of preventing state awareness between these locations as they crunch down. And I'm very certain that's why they picked the L shape. It's kind of like if you're on a ship, right? Like, say you're all flying around the 890 jump, and you try to have multiple servers hosting this 890 jump because maybe you're throwing the biggest space party the universe has ever seen, and you got a bunch of people in the pool room, and you got a bunch of people outside the pool room waiting to get into the pool room. And as long as that door's shut and nobody needs to know about anybody, it's easy to scale those 2 servers separately. As soon as you open that door and you have like a big freaking 100-person swimming party on the inside, it goes back to my mosh put example in that video I did, I don't know, like a year ago at this point. Now all of a sudden, all that state transferring back and forth, that becomes a massive amount of overhead, not on the individual compute nodes, but on the network that connects those compute nodes. That's the problem that they need to overcome in small spaces. That's why dynamic server meshing and static server meshing will do nothing to help clusters of people in small areas. It only helps scale the game out. Right? It's going to help us get to 100 star systems eventually. 5 to start. And it's going to help all that space, and it's going to help people spread out across moons, but as soon as you have 100 on 100 battle, you're going to start to feel the constraints. That's why the containerization is so important, and that's why multi-crew is so important. A lot of people talk about, you know, how they want AI blades and NPC crew and all this stuff, but from where CIG stands, I would think that they really want to emphasize multi-crew gameplay, because if you can have, say you have 100 people, say you have 500 people versus 500 people. You got two teams, 500 each. If you just try to smash those together into a couple servers right next to each other, the state transfer is going to be, that's required to have everybody know what's going on. It's going to be insane, right? If they're all flying their own ships. But if you can contain groups of people in large capital ships, so you have an Idris with 30 people on board, and then you have your Javelin with 100 people on board, and you have, you know, a couple other ships with between 20 and 100 people each. Now, the battle becomes manageable because all those players are contained. They're in a container, and people outside the container don't need to know what those people are doing. So your 1,000 people total has become, you know, maybe 10 to 20 objects that information needs shared between. You know what I'm saying? Super important for scalability. So multi-crew is not just something we want as organizations or as fans of MMOs. It is something that the game is going to depend on to scale. Patrick Jones, what are some solutions you can think of that will help with large amounts of people in small spaces? Taco Knight, thanks for the follow, man. Arokian, thanks for the follow. Vulcan's Labyrinth, thanks for the follow. What are some of the solutions I can think of that will help with large amounts of people in small spaces? It's going to be anything that will allow you to not have to share the data. Yeah, like PlanetSide did this, right, Patrick? PlanetSide had these massive PlanetSide battles of... I never played the game, so I'm not pretending to be an expert on it, but from what I've heard, they had a lot of people on both sides, and they used kind of a degradation system so that your graphics card would only have to render blobs instead of each unit individually. Because there's multiple problems of scale here. One is sharing all the information on what's going on, right? Like if you have two servers side by side and teams are in these servers and they're shooting at each other, like server X and server Y, server X is going to have to communicate to server Y that, you know, this person is shooting there and this person's shooting here and this person just dropped a bomb and this person fired a rocket launcher and this person threw a grenade, and there's just all kinds of information that's going to have to flow back and forth. But not only that, then you have the rendering challenge, right? I interviewed a CEO of a gaming company on this channel a few months ago who had launched Bitcraft Online, and I asked him where this falls down. And he said it actually falls down at the graphics card first. Like having to render all of the stuff on the screen, like the client machine can't keep up. He thinks it falls down there before it falls down on the network in the data center. But he definitely said the data center is like the next place it would fall down. So first you got to overcome the graphics, then you got to overcome the network. I'm not a graphics expert at all. I do not understand graphics programming. I've never done 3D modeling or 3D work, so all I can tell you is that I would think of it as a data problem. The amount of data that you have to shove down your GPU pipe, you're going to have to reduce it somehow. PlanetSide, from what I understand, did that by taking 50 players in the distance, and instead of your GPU having to render all 50 separately, they just kind of gave you a blob. And you would render it as a single thing, potentially, just with a low granularity of fidelity, so that's one way to do it. Yeah, but me at home, I have to receive this info to my system for my GPU to show me it, so there's a size to the pipe, kind of in the network. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it, expat. You have multiple pipes. You have the data center, you have multiple servers sitting, like the DGSs, right? The game servers are sitting next to each other with a network in between those. I'm talking about that pipe being overloaded, but then you also have the pipe from the data center to your house. And it is a very real possibility that you can overload that pipe with too much information. Well, obviously, there's going to be a lot more data flowing between the game servers than there are to your house, because it should be the responsibility of the replication layer in Star Citizen's architecture to filter down all that stuff that's happening and only send your client what it needs to render everything that's going on. So that's one layer of downsampling the data so that you're getting just enough to render what you need to. But you could still overwhelm your bandwidth with that if you're not doing that intelligently. And you got to do the same thing in the servers. If you have a 500 v 500 battle and the pipe between the two DGSs can't handle this, then you're going to have to downsample there as well. And I don't know exactly. I'm not a game developer. I'm a systems guy, so I understand the problem, but I've never actually done game development. So if I was solving the problem, I would look at like, how can we batch or ignore certain types of actions? Like, could I start transmitting it less often? Would be another one, right? Like, instead of a high fidelity stream of data, like player A moved here, then moved here, then moved here, then moved here. Like, maybe I could say, maybe I could skip some of those interim steps and just say player A moved from here to here, and then have the remote server calculate the in-between. You could see this happening in things like, I don't know if you've done any OBS work, or there's a lot of programs out there. I'm a slow thinker, so I'm not really going to be able to rattle them all off the top of my head, but a lot of things will take 2 points, and they will smooth the in-between for you, right? Like in OBS, if I want to do a transition, I say start here, end here, and then it'll just handle smoothing things in between. You could do the same thing on a game server, where you just send the start and the finish without all the in-betweens and have it calculate everything. That'd be one way of calling the data. I see network calling on the NPC movement and distance. Yeah, they teleport around. So maybe they're already doing some of that. But the point is, Expat and Arcadia and everybody who's weighing in on this, the point is that these are two different scaling challenges, right? The dynamic server meshing and static server meshing and all that stuff, that is for scaling out. And all this optimization on graphics rendering and calling of network data and reducing how much data you have to send, that is the small scale scaling challenge. Like, you can't shove more people into a bar room with server meshing. That's not how you do it. You shove more people into a bar room by minimizing the amount of data you have to send, minimizing the amount of things you have to render. That's how you scale down to a bar room. You scale out to a universe with lots and lots of servers. Two different scaling challenges. Does that make sense? That's funny though. Teleport around in the distance. You're not wrong. But what they need to do is, instead of having to teleport around the distance, they need to send those 2 points and have your machine handle the smooth movement. And that's why MMOs have mostly been point-and-click dice rollers, because high fidelity is hard. Exactly. 100%. Exactly. That's why when you look at things that have scaled, Ashes of Creation is a great example, right? That's another game, another modern game is being developed that they're looking to scale to a lot of players on the screen at the same time. They're taking a very different route. They're taking a very different route from Star Citizen. And one of the things they did right off the bat was they said, I'm going to get to that in a minute, Chrome Dome. You instance the bar in the least intrusive way possible. But one of the things Ashes of Creation did right off the bat is they said, we're going to do tab target. And the reason, a lot of times you'll see people in the wild say, you know, tab target is antiquated, we hate it, we want action combat, blah, blah, blah. But tab target is a lot more scalable than action combat for that reason, right? Because the amount of data that you have to transmit from point A to point B goes way down. Because now you only have to transmit when a player's target changes and when they're performing an action and when their location or position changes, right? You have to transmit much less. In action combat, it's really important that you get a steady stream of movement coordinates. You have to know the player's facing, what they're doing, where the opponent is, blah, blah, blah. In action combat, you know, you don't really need to know the player's facing a lot of the time. You just have to know that player A was here, player B was here, I performed this action with this target. And so that was a choice that Ashes of Creation made really early on in order to scale up to a large number of players on one server. And as a result, I can guarantee you that Ashes of Creation will be able to handle far more players on one DGS than Star Citizen will. So if Star Citizen achieves, you know, 100 to 200 players per DGS, I would imagine that Ashes of Creation will achieve 500 to 600. Just because of that difference. And I'm pretty sure Ashes of Creation is already kind of closing in on that. I think in some of the recent testing, they were hitting 500 to 600 players on a DGS. I could be misremembering that, but you can fact check me. Whereas Star Citizen, we're still in the 100 player per DGS realm, I would imagine. Hard to tell because they're not really advertising player caps on a per shard basis unless I'm missing that. And they're now stitching together multiple DGSs to host the live environment. But how those DGSs are performing with any kind of player clustering, I have not observed, but I'd be really interested in those numbers. I would expect them to go down. Ash has actually hit the downside of that. They have so many people on a server that many locations are overwhelmed with players. And back to Chromedone's point about instancing, in the bar example that I was talking about, yeah, instancing is definitely a tool here, right? Like, and CIG called this out at CitizenCon Direct, where they were talking about, you know, they want to be able to set parameters, like, we don't want more than 100 players in this bar. And so whenever you zone into the bar, they're going to have something that figures out how many people are in there and if they have to come up with a new bar instance and so on and so forth. And they want to make it really invisible to the user that you're playing in an instance environment, so that, you know, you don't walk into an overcrowded bar. And I think that's a perfect use for the instancing technology, to Chromedone's point. But it doesn't solve the problem of the 500 on 500 battle. It solves the problem of too many people piling into a bar. You give them the optimal bar experience. And then as far as Ash is having too many people in an area, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a level design problem / population management issue. I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, because the thing is like, you want the capability in certain circumstances, but in other circumstances, you're going to pay the price, right? In Ashes, they want to scale up to these large player counts because they want to have large battles between villages and towns and the node system, right? They want nodes to be able to go to war and win territory and that kind of thing. And when you have a big battlefield, there's merits to being able to put 500 people on a screen. But whenever you're walking into a town, because Ashes of Creation also committed to doing parlor games, for example, where you could sit in a tavern and play Yahtzee or card games or whatever. Like, they're committed to doing that in their Kickstarter. Obviously, you don't want 500 people in the tavern. Right, that's going to be a miserable experience for everybody. Nobody else is going to be able to move, and all the tables are going to be full, and so it becomes like you want the capability, but you want to be able to dial it, right? Like, you want to be able to put 500 people on a battlefield, but you also want to limit how many people can enter the tavern through instancing or something else. And it's just multiple dials that you're turning to deliver different experiences at different times, depending on what the player's desired gameplay is. So, like, same thing in Star Citizen. Another good example is the persistent entity streaming and persistence, right? Star Citizen comes out with a system where, like, we want to be able to persist anything, anywhere, forever. And everybody agreed that that was a very good capability to have, but that doesn't mean you want that capability in place everywhere at all times, because then you got junked up landing pads, and, you know, you go to land on a moon and, like, there's nothing but wreckages around. You go to an elevator in New Babbage and they've filled it with those little squid things, you know? So obviously having the capability doesn't mean that you don't need other dials to dial a capability back. That makes sense? It's the same thing with the player count. Like, you want the ability to put 500 players on a screen. Doesn't mean you always want 500 players on the screen. Right, the density problem is probably more of a player incentives behavior problem. You'll have to discourage density somehow. It's a gameplay problem as much as a tech problem. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, incentivization is a huge part of all this, no doubt. If you can incentivize the players to play how you want them in order to play nice and cooperate with the technology, I mean, that's a win-win. Because now you've convinced the players that they are exhibiting their free will and playing the way they want to play. But at the same time, 2010, thank you so much for the follow and the sub, man. I really appreciate it. But at the same time, you are St. Patrick D, thank you for the follow. At the same time, you are reducing the strain on the underlying technology. World of Warcraft used to have people fade in and out of rooms, even when they were transferring between instances. Yeah, exactly. That's called layering. That's what WoW calls it. Layering is something that I expect Star Citizen to do eventually, as much as nobody wants to see that. I know a lot of people have expressed that being fundamentally incompatible with the promises that have been made, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a technological reality, and that they're already laying the groundwork for this, right? If you look at some of the things they've said about base building and base assaults, this is a really good one. I don't even know how long ago this was now because I'm losing track of time. I think this was prior to the end of 2024. They talked about how assaulting a base would work across multiple shards, right? Because we all have multiple shards right now. You're choosing the shard you log into by right-clicking a friend on your friends list and saying join their server. That's how you choose your shard. But under the hood, I'm sure all these shards have names, much like a WoW realm or a WoW layer of a realm has a name or a number. And their response was, there will be logic that controls where you can assault a base, right? And part of that logic will be if the player that owns the base is online, then assaults of that base can only happen on the shard in which that player is residing. What does that sound like? It sounds to me like they're already laying the groundwork for layering. This is exactly how things work in PAX Day, for example, or a number of other games where, like in PAX Day, if a server tile fills up with too many players, they layer just that tile. All the connecting tiles around it are not layered, but in that layered tile, the buildings are replicated across the tiles, or across the layers, so that everybody on, regardless of the layer, they see the same structure. But in the future, whenever structure warfare emerges, that's on the roadmap for PAX Day. At some point, they're going to be introducing that. Like, you're going to be limited to like the primary layer to be able to interact with that system. And Star Citizen is talking about the same thing already. So I see this as an inevitability for Star Citizen. Yeah, it's tough because what do you want people to feel walking around? Seamlessness has a cost. Yeah. When my buddy asks for my help at a location, I must be able to join them on their layer, or I can't help. Yeah. I would think that you would logic priority for orgs, friends, etc. Yeah. I mean, that's what most games do. They prioritize your party. Guild Wars, I think, even had a guild priority system where like it would go based on your party, your friends, and even your guild. At the end of the day, maybe we can find comfort in semiconductor advancements, brute forcing our MMO problems. Can't we convert all CPU-based server into GPU? Somebody else was talking to me about that several months ago. Like, can't GPUs solve these problems? And the answer is no. GPUs are not going to magically solve all these problems, especially when a lot of the problem is network bandwidth. Compute, which is the only thing a GPU could help with, Oswantl, is like we can already scale compute, right? We can already add more CPUs, more servers. Like we can already do that, but interconnectivity eventually becomes problematic. SC already has the server affinity function where it joins you on people in your org friends list. Same thing can be used in layers instances. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at some point it becomes a network problem. Precisely. So they're going to have to do something with layering. I just don't see any other way of doing it. And like they can reduce, and here's the thing, like even if they do all the optimization work they were talking about earlier, right? They do all the GPU optimization they can. They do all the network data calling work that they can. This is all optimization work, which is going to come at the very end of the development cycle for this stuff, by the way. So we're not really going to see what that looks like until we get much closer to release. But even after they've done all this optimization work, still the system is going to be breakable. Like there's no such thing as infinite optimization. So all we can do is get to the game to a certain point where the bar feels out of reach. Like they've done a really good job if the bar feels out of reach. But if people intentionally try to break it, and you know that they will, then there's still going to be limits, right? Like maybe maybe they put in a tremendous amount of optimization work, and they get us to the point where they can comfortably fit 200 people in a high fidelity DGS. And there's enough network capacity that they could have a high fidelity combat experience be able to span 4 DGSs, right? So we can now have a 400 on 400 FPS battle. Like, that would be an incredible achievement. It would require a ton of optimization work, a ton of on all levels, the GPU, the data, the network, everything, right? Let's just say they do that. Well, what happens when players try to do 401 versus 400? And you know they're going to. Like, no matter how far they raise the ceiling, there is going to be a limit that players can hit, and the players will hit it. And that's why they need something like layering, instancing, whatever the case may be, right? They're going to need that thing that they can scale infinitely. And there's no other game in town than sharding, layering, instancing. And whenever you instance an open world, right, like just a field on Microtech, they usually call that layering. Layering is just another term for instancing in reality. It's just more open-ended. And so that's why they need to develop this stuff. Even though we don't want them to use it, even though Chris Roberts, I'm sure, would prefer they not have to use it, because Chris Roberts is just as passionate about a physicalized world as we are, one that feels contiguous and real and void of these constructs that often these digital simulations are confined to. Like, Chris wants to break all that stuff. We know he does. And we want him to break all that stuff. That's why we're throwing all this money at him. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to build this in and just hope that we encounter it as little as possible. That's my take. And I think, to the point of the person up above who said technology might save us, I think it will. Over time, technology will raise the limits. And as time goes on, like that ceiling will continue to get higher and higher and higher until eventually it's very possible we may never hit it in regular usage without intentionally trying to break it. That would be the ideal. Many games have tried to solve each one of these problems separately. SC is just the first one to try and address and capitalize on all of them at once, both micro and macro. This goes back to the video I put out recently where I was talking about breadth and depth. There's really not too many games out there that try to give a broad experience that is deep on many levels. Star Citizen's one of the few that I can think of. GTA 6 maybe being another contender in that area. Chrome Dome, interestingly, PlanetSide has the official world record for most people in a battle at 1,158. I had never played PlanetSide. I wish I had, just to experience that. But that's right in line with what I was just saying. Like, if they achieved a 400 on 400 battle, that would be an amazing feat and accomplishment in my mind. And that would put them close to the world record, as you just spelled it out there. It'll be interesting to see how close Ashes gets to that too. 2010, couldn't unstable jump points be gatekeepers to an instance that is full? That is a very interesting thought, and one that we have talked about quite a bit internally here. I think that the vast space that comprises Star Citizen could be used to their advantage in very interesting ways, and I think one would be some kind of like quantum instability. Because the spaces are so large, there's really no practical way for players to get and congregate in one area outside of quantum travel. And so it would be very interesting if they could make things feel real by saying, hey, this area of space is getting really full, and so what we're going to do is create like quantum instability all around it, so that people trying to warp into that get kind of a warning that pops up that says, hey, detect quantum instability detected, your travel's going to be delayed, are you sure you want to continue? And that would give players the option to like bail out and not go there. or actively make the decision to basically get in the queue by setting their quantum route, but their ship is just kind of forever stuck in quantum travel until space frees up in the area, and then it would let them through. I think that would be a really clever way of using space time to their advantage. I would love to see something like that. I guess Eve has the advantage of being point and click. Yeah, Oswintel. That's what I was just talking about earlier with tab targeting, and why Ashes chose tab targeting over action combat. It's because it allows them to scale up to more players on the DGS, and you have the exact same thing in EVE Online. EVE Online is basically tab target. It's just, we don't call it that because it works a little bit differently in EVE Online, but same mechanisms. Also, EVE Online has the advantage that a DGS is never in proximity to another DGS, because DGSs represent star systems there. And so it has the advantage that what is taking place on one DGS, another DGS will never need to know about. Because there's no plausible scenario in which what is happening in one solar system would affect another solar system in any way, right? That is very different from DGSs in Star Citizen, because in Star Citizen wants to bring these DGSs in close quarters with one another, right? When we get to the point of dynamic server meshing and you have a DGS that represents an 890 jump and another DGS that represents a Carrack, and these two ships are interacting with one another, you have two DGSs that are in close enough proximity that information needs shared between those DGSs. That is very different from the EVE Online model. And EVE Online has a huge advantage as a result in its network architecture. Because again, they can all operate completely independently. They don't have to be aware of each other at all. Only the back-end systems in EVE Online need to communicate with the DGSs. Primarily the market systems. CCP outlined that a while ago. They have a dedicated server mesh to their market, and that thing interacts with the DGS's, transaction. I don't even know if that actually interacts directly with the DGS's. That would be a question for the devs over there. I don't know. It could just be that the players are interacting directly with the market servers from the client. I don't know if it's proxied through the DGS or anything like that. Unknown. And then the last things in my 2026 column were new missions. Obviously, we're going to continue to see new mission types throughout 2026. I had listed reputation stuff. I don't know if that's plausible anymore. We had seen a lot of the stuff on reputation in the Citizen Con at the end of 2024. But since then, I haven't heard much about it. Does anyone here? Am I missing something? So I don't know if we're going to see a big reputation shift in 2026. I would expect not. Law and security, I don't think that is anywhere on their radar for 2026. So we'll just scratch that off the list. So if I had to refine these 2026 predictions, let me think about it in a moment. Okay, I've given this some thought now, and here is my refactored, updated, revised prediction list. 2025 is behind us. Now we're focused on 2026 and 2027. Some of the things I've moved forward, some of these things are obvious. To CIG's credit, they've done a pretty good job of communicating to us where their focus is going to be, and so some of this we're kind of taking at face value with a little modification. So for 2026, engineering improvements, number one, I'm kind of going in order here of when I expect to see these things, give or take. No doubt we're going to see engineering improvements. They've already communicated it to us. We just got the big engineering patch. I'm already seeing patch notes in like the 4.6 release where they're doing bug fixing on engineering stuff and ships. I expect, refinement of all the ships to happen throughout the year, in addition to certain engineering features we haven't seen yet. The inventory revamp, that's coming, obviously. And crafting tables shortly after. I'm expecting that we're only going to see the small variations of crafting tables in 2026, which will still give us plenty of things to do. I am so freaking pumped for this. This is going to be the first system coming online that connects so many of the other systems. I'm hoping that crafting incorporates output from mining, from salvaging. I'm hoping it uses all the things to produce even the small components that we're going to be able to produce right off the bat, which, I'm expecting to be weapons and armor, helmets, that type of thing. So that's exciting. And I think by now we know that this is going to depend on the inventory revamp. So it's obvious in what order we're going to get those. V5 planets. I think we're going to see, obviously, the Nyx planets this year. That's going to be incredibly amazing. I don't know how many. I don't know if we're going to see all the Nyx planets this year. I don't think we will. I think we'll see a couple, especially if you consider the moons and all those other bodies. I actually have completion of Nyx slated for 2027 if you look ahead and see. I think we're going to get, and I kind of pulled this number out of nowhere, 50% of dynamic server meshing. If you go back to Benoit's interview, he talked about how they're going to roll out dynamic server meshing. It's going to be piecemeal. It's not going to be like a big bang release like some people might think. We have static server meshing now, and what they're going to do is they're going to take components of that and turn them dynamic. So today or tomorrow, maybe one portion of static is going to become dynamic. A month after that, maybe another portion, and so on and so forth. And slowly over time, the static meshing that we see and experience today will become more and more dynamic. So I'm anticipating about half of what the end goal is will be dynamic by the end of 2026. Something that has not been clearly communicated, but I think is a no contest, is we're going to get player refining this year. And I think it could be sooner. I have this halfway down the list, but this could arrive alongside the small crafting tables. This is going to give players the ability with certain ships to refine materials on our own, separate from the station refining processes. I think this is going to be important for them to deliver this year alongside crafting, so that when we extract ore from the ground, we can actually turn that into materials usable by the crafting tables. So I'm expecting we see the first player refining ships. I think we're going to see improved quantum travel this year with the quantum jump and that kind of stuff. Hab placement I had on the 2025 list, as you saw earlier in the stream. We're moving that to 2026. We're just carrying this forward. This is something we often do in project management, right? When you miss a target, you just carry it forward. That's what we're doing with hab placement. I do not see base building proper in 2026. I'm convinced we're going to see hab placement before we see base building proper. I would love to be proven wrong on that, but that's not how I see it. And I think we're going to get the hab placement for the holiday patch. That's going to be the big release as they go on break this year, and it'll probably be busted until, January or February next year. That's how I expect that to go. Some other things, obviously, we're going to get more missions, more Wicklow stuff, all that stuff, and of course, Squadron 42. I don't know when Squadron 42 is going to land this year, but I would expect it to be Q4. And that is going to... It's going to be... 2026 is going to be so interesting. I expect Squadron 42 to ignite the whole industry, really. This is going to have a ripple effect across gaming. It's not going to be just for Star Citizen and Squadron fans, as most of this stuff has been. Squadron 42 it's going to be big. It's going to ripple across thousands of content creators and all the big publications and the industry as a whole. And I think this is really going to ignite a lot of discussions on the merit of crowdfunding and CIG's business model, and so much is riding on it. Now, the only thing that could make this less dramatic than otherwise it could be is where it lands in relation to Grand Theft Auto 6's release. That could be a wrinkle here. We'll see. But there's a very real possibility that Grand Theft Auto 6 gets delayed again. I mean, there's certainly a possibility that Squadron 42 could get delayed again too, but just based on the language and the messaging that we're seeing, it seems to me that CIG has a very high level of confidence that it is going to release this year. So, it'll be a big 2026, fellas. And then let's continue right into 2027. 2027, I have crafting improvements. So we're getting, crafting V2 Tier 0 this year, obviously. I don't expect to get more than the small tables. I'd be surprised if we got anything more. But in 2027, I expect them to continue flushing it out. I expect to get the medium and the large tables and the ability to create bigger and bigger things. Base building proper. If we get hab placements this year, whether we do or we don't, I do expect base building proper to make it into the game in 2027. Much like crafting, though, I expect it to start with just small base building. You know, they presented the vehicles to us with you know, the small kind of ground vehicles that could do small construction, and the larger medium-sized ships, and then, you know, Pioneer. I expect us to get the smaller end of the spectrum there. Limited base building, testing that out, and then sometime beyond 2027, we'll start to ramp up on what we can construct with the base building tools. I expect the Planet Tech V5 rework of existing planets to start in 2027. This one I'm a little unsure of. This could start this year, but I'm defensively saying 2027 this starts. This will be the reworking of like the Microtech, the Hurston planets, so, you know, all the planets and moons that we have using the V5 technology. This is going to be incredible. It's really going to refresh the entire universe, put a fresh coat of paint across much of the game. Social improvements that we have all been waiting on, I just don't see them picking that up this year. As much as I would love to see it, I push that to 2027, along with the reputation overhaul. I think those things might come kind of hand in hand to some extent. We'll see. But I don't expect either of those things in 2026, more like 2027. Along with hacking and data running, I don't expect that this year either. I do think it's coming sooner than later, so I put it in 2027 column. And Maelstrom question mark. I had that for 2025. I had no idea what I was thinking. I think we'll be lucky to get that by 2027. That is going to be a massive change to combat, and I'm so excited to see how Maelstrom interacts with engineering and how it changes the game. One thing I didn't even put on here is I know we're getting kind of a temporary armor system. I would expect we might see more fleshed out. Maybe a little bit this year. Maybe that depends on Maelstrom. I don't know. But between this year and next, we'll see more on that. And this year, I went ahead and I started doing even further predictions. You know, during the stream and past conversations, we've talked a lot about both Squadron and Star Citizen's release dates. I know Chris CR has said potentially 2027. 2028, I'm not buying it. I think it's going to be a little later than that. So I went ahead and said in 2028, I would expect us to continue seeing base building improvements. We'll get the large and medium variants of that stuff. The hangar upgrades that they've talked about. Ownership. I think that we'll get 2 partial star systems in 2028. The remaining 2. I expect them to deliver these much like they're delivering Nyx. They're not going to be big bang releases. They'll be kind of piecemeal delivered to us. I think they'll complete the V5 overhaul of planets, of the ones we have today, by 2028. I think that's when we'll get the improved log in, log out experience. I originally had that slated for 2026. I don't know what I was thinking. I think this is going to come much later in the process. Death of the Spaceman, it's really hard to say. This is one of those things that I think is going to be rolled out piecemeal as well. There's a lot of components to Death of a Spaceman, but I'm thinking that by 2028, most of those components will be in place, and we might be able to say that Death of the Spaceman is here. I also am guessing, this is a total wild-ass guess, that we'll get the beta moniker by 2028. There's a chance we see this sooner. There's a chance we would see this in 2027. I've even thought in the past that this might come alongside Squadron 42, but the more I think about it, the more I think, nah, it's going to lag Squadron 42. It's not going to come at the same time. So it could be end of 2027, early 2028. Who knows? It could come later in 2028. But I do think this beta moniker will come around this time. Let's keep going further. 2029. I mean, it's so hard to predict anything this far out. So take all this with a grain of salt, right? My 2025 predictions were less than 50% correct. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this. This is total outsider, best of my ability. And obviously, I don't expect less to be accomplished over time. The list here is much shorter than the other ones. It's just, this is a reflection of the further out we go, the more and more difficult it's going to be to predict, right? But if I'm making wags and you're willing to hear them, I'm saying player space stations start to come online in 2029. The 5-star systems that are promised for 1.0 will be mostly complete by 2029. The law and security systems, I mean, this is a super, could be, it really depends on how they choose to implement it. It could be a very complex system. And the polishing phase. We all know how in-depth the polishing phase is going to be. We've seen it. We've been living through it with Squadron. I think that starts in 2029. And if we're lucky, it continues in 2030. And the great holiday break of 2030, right before they leave for Christmas, New Year's, at the end of December, is when we will get the 1.0 release. What do you think? How right do you think I am? How wrong do you think I am? What do you think I missed here? There's a lot of things that we are expecting that didn't make it into any of these columns. I'm not trying to make this like a totally complete prediction through the next 5 years. This is just kind of off the cuff, high level thinking, rough milestones. This is the way I think about it. Do you think I'm close to the mark, or do you think I'm far off of it? I would love to hear your predictions for 2026, 2027, however far you want to go. I would love to hear them in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think of mine. How close to the mark do you think I am? Just like this year, we will revisit this again at the end of 2026 and see how we are tracking. I enjoy this. I hope you do too. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments and continue this conversation there. Until then, please take care. Grolo out.